Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube Table Enabled. Today we have a long simon. Hilchos Basic Knesset Simon Kufnan Gimel 153, 22 sifim, 22 halachas about Binyan Basic Knesset, building a shul. Let's get started. Aleph, Mutar Lasos from Basic Knesset is Beis HaMedrash. You want to revamp a shul and make it into a Beis HaMedrash. Now again, I'm going to give you a simple explanation of what people assume a Basic Knesset and Beis HaMedrash is. In the regular share. Ian Tolina and I have a totally, if you're listening to Ian Tolina, I have a totally different explanation of what a basic Knesset and base matters really are meant by Chazal. And that's why I was watching highlights of the football game with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints from last night. Tom Brady, an amazing comeback. I was watching it in the back row of the shul, with AirPods on. No one heard what I was doing, but people, I guess, could see the football game, watch by, and I was excoriated by a couple of people. How dare you do such a thing in a shul? Now, I wasn't talking to anybody. Carlos Roche, I was enjoying myself. Levity, maybe, don't know. But I rely on Ian to lean on. It's Ian to lean on. I rely on it. Whether you want to rely on it or not is up to you. Maybe you could ask a rabbi. What the last is Beis HaKnesses, Beis HaMedrash. A shul, you can make the Beis Medrash. Avalon Beis Medrash, Beis HaKnesses. The Gemara discusses in Mesechus Megillah what has more kedusha, a Beis Medrash or Beis HaKnesses. The Gemara decides a Beis Medrash has more kedusha, and therefore Malin B'kedusha v'lo Moridin, to go take it from Beis Medrash to a shul is Moridin and not Malin. Beis Bnei Ha'ir Shemachru Beis HaKnesses Yicholim Likach B'dam of Teva. This is the first Mishnah in Mesechus Megillah in the fourth parak, where it talks about what you do if you sold a shul, right? And you have money, right? Now, we're talking about instance where you're allowed to sell a shul. You have another shul built, right? You could use the money to purchase an Aron Kodesh. We commonly refer to as an Aron Kodesh. Or Bima would also be called a Teva. We place Sefer Torah. And Machu Teva, if they sold a Teva, you can take the mantle, the covering for the Sefer Torah. Machru matpakas, if they sold that, lokin b'damei svarim, you can buy svarim. Dahainu shekazov kol chumash levado. Apparently, they used to write in klaf and ashuris each one of the five chumashim, Bereshis, Shmos. We don't do that anymore. V'chein neviim v'ksuvim. Neviim and ksuvim are equal to any one of the five svarim of chumashim. Machru svarim, if they sold svarim, lokin b'dmei and sefer Torah. The highest kedusha is sefer Torah. Aval ipcha, which has all five chumashim together. Aval ipcha lahoridim kedusha and aser. To sell something of higher kedusha, Sefer Torah, and buy svarim with it, that would be aser. They sold one thing, right, and they bought something which was more kadosh. The rest of the money also has to be used for something of higher kedusha, or we'll see in a second, maybe equal kedusha would be okay also. Gimel Sefer Torah is both toast. Let's say you have Sefer Torah which has a mistake in it, so it passes that as a kosher Sefer Torah. Do you know chumashim? It's like a chumash or a navi or ksuvim, which, right, because presumably most of the other chumashim, it was only a mistake in one of the chumashim. The rest of them are okay. V'ayin le'el simin kufim gimel dalet imuto liknos b'dmei kedusha achas kedusha acheres keyotzeba yesh osir meish matir. There's a famous, it's not a famous machalokas, but it's an interesting machalokas over here. Can you switch? Can you sell a shul and buy another shul? Can you sell a teva and buy another teva? Machlokas, right? This is based on the concept of Ma'alim Kedusha V'lo Moridin. That's the whole purpose, the whole reason for this Mishnah. The basis for this Mishnah is Ma'alim Kedusha V'lo Moridin. You go up in Kedusha, not down. What if it's equal? It's not Ma'alim, it's not Moridin. What do you do in that case? So the Yeshos and the Ranas, there's the Ma'ari, the Tur, and the Rabbeinu Yonah, they say it's okay. The Beralacha, Mishnah Berurah, brings two achrona. The prima godim, the halacha is mutter. The Meiri, Rav says Rav Gaonim, the Sarach Eloi Dafka. You have to actually be Malin. Equal is not okay. As I mentioned when I talked about Rafai Balkon, Bari Shulchan, I said even the great postic, the Chafetz Chaim, fortunately, was not machriya enough. You have to, if you're a postic, you got to machriya on every shayla. And sometimes he just left it for you to decide. And this halacha, he didn't really pick a side over here. He says they're machmir, they're makilim. Just like the Shulchan Aruch says, of course, I'd like the Shulchan Aruch to be machria also. The Shulchan Aruch a lot of times is not machria, but I'd like at least the Posek Achron, which most people consider the Chametz Chaim to be the Posek Achron. He's not machria. A lot of times he is machria, but here he's not, unfortunately. Hey, im gabu mos benos beis hakneses beis hamedrash shaliknos teva and pachas o sefer Torah. If they collected money to build a shul, a beis medrash, or any one of these things is kedusha, and they want to switch the money for something else. Now here they didn't sell the shul, they didn't sell the sefer Torah. They just collected money. The same halacha applies. Once you collect the money for something, that's money that is earmarked for something, and you have to go. You can only use that money for something, which is more kadosh. If they already did that, they collected money to build a shul. They collected, $4 million campaign. The shul only cost $3 million. They got what they wanted. The purpose was to build a shul. They have an extra $1 million. You can do whatever you want with it, even something which is chol, no kedusha at all. They can buy baseball cards. If when they were collecting the money to buy a shul or to buy an aron or sefer Torah, and they made it tonight, they said if there's extra money left over, we'll use it for whatever we want. Even if they bought a sefer Torah and they sold a sefer Torah, and they bought again mixes adamim, and they had money left over. Mutar lahorid on mutar. Now, obviously they made it tonight, right? And they collected money, so they can do whatever they want with it. Here we're talking about where they used the money, they used all of the money, and they sold it, and then they bought it again, and they had extra money after that. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins, you're allowed to use it for whatever you want. If you had extra money, also read them. But if you didn't make the Tanai originally when they collected it, only after when you sold it, then the Tanai is not effective. Let's say they used money earmarked for building a shul. They bought just raw stones or pieces of wood. Even on the pieces of wood and the stones, there's kedusha. You can only change it for something more kadosh, meaning, let's say, for a teva, for an aron. Let's say they didn't actually donate it. They just brought, some people had extra pieces of wood, avonim, and they brought it to the Beis HaKnesses. If they came into the hands of the Gabbai is like a gizbar. He's the one in control of the money of Hekdesh. Right? Beis HaKnesses is treated in many ways like Beis HaMikdash, like Hekdesh. Also, it has kedusha, and you can't use it for something less. It's a din of malan kedusha v'lomaridim. However, they just brought it near the shul. They didn't give it to the Gabbai yet. Then you could use it for something else. However, since they donated it, they took these rocks or wood from their backyard and they planned on giving it to the shul, we learn many places that even if he didn't say to himself, I'm giving these pieces of wood or stones to the shul. If I think machshava, is like a neder, therefore my intent and my thought that I plan on giving it to the shul makes it like staka, makes it like hektish, right? So you can't be choser, but you still have to give the eitzim ba'avonim to the Gabbai. That's a different din of staka or hektish, right? Machshava, it has the din. However, you could use it for something else. It's kadosh, but you could use it for something else because it didn't come into the yad of hektish. So therefore, it is din with staka. So it has to be used for not your purposes, for the purposes of the shul, but doesn't have to be used for a davar shel kedusha. Vav mochrim beis hakneses v'chein shar dvarim shel kedusha. Afilu sefer Torah aspakas tatalmidim or lahaski yishom medama. Even though we said basically that you have to go malan v'kedusha, right? There is an exception even for sefer Torah, which is the most kaddish thing. You could sell a sefer Torah for Talmud Torah, or to get married, the Gemara says, or to marry off Yisomim, even for you to get married, or even for other people to get married. Seemingly only Yisomim, because it's hard for them to get married, because they have no one to pay for their weddings, orphans. Zayim, how the basic ness is nimkar? Basic ness is that we said it could be sold. Hani mili shal kfarim. It's talking about a small hamlet, a village, a town. She'ein boim anashim makom acherim. I think the distinction is, let's say, a shul in West Hempstead, parents live Woodmere, um, Telstone, as opposed to a place in Yerushalayim or a place in Manhattan, where a lot of people come. Shalonasis, right? You have or Borough Park or something like that, where you have Shomer Shabbos, or in Flatbush you have Landau, these minion factories. Shalonasis El Lebnei Akfarim Levadim, right? These shuls, the shul in West Hempstead, the shul in Woodmere, the shul in Telstone, it's only made for the people of that city. So there you could sell it because it doesn't belong to the tzibur. It belongs to the people that built it in that shul, in that place. You could sell it. Obviously, you have to use the money for something with more kedusha. Like I said, the money remains in this kedusha. I'll read them kedusha. You can't. You have to be malev kedusha v'lo moridim. That which we said they could sell it, right? And you could use the. You have to use the money for kedusha. That's when the people of the city sold it without the knowledge of the leaders, because technically, we'll see who owns the shul. Really, the builders own the shul. The person who donated the money, he owns the shul. It's like a house. He owns the shul, but he gave it to Hektish. So, in a certain respect, it's actually in the hands of the people, the Bnei Ha'ir. So they could technically sell it because the person, even though they built it, it really belongs to all the people of Telstone, that city. So they could sell it even if the leaders, even Yitzchak Ravitz, the mayor didn't allow it, or the rabbi didn't allow it, they could sell it. Similarly, there's another way for it to be sold, because yes, the people own it, of the city own it. Also, there are representatives of the city, the beneficiaries of the city, the richest people in the city. We're going to see, the Gemara says they have certain powers over there. So they have the rights to sell the shul. Really, they're supposed to do it with the allowance of the entire city, in front of the city, with their haskam, with their agreement. But if they didn't agree to it, they also have the power to sell it. However, if not only did the rich people, right, the philanthropists in the city agree, but also the entire city agreed, then in that case, we don't say it didn't amount to because once they sell a shul, right, it was their property, right? It is their property of the entire city, along with the Tovei Ayir, the rich people. It became something of kedusha by designating it as Beis HaKnesses. But again, the kedusha of Beis HaKnesses only stems from the Bailah. So if all the Bailim, the rich people, and with everyone's agreement in the city, they decided to sell it, so it loses kedusha. And they can do whatever they want with the money. If the people of the city accept it upon themselves that even what an individual decides to do with the money, what is done is done. It's considered 7 Tovi year, but Maimin Anshe a year. It doesn't have to agree to it verbally. They just have to do it publicly. Put a letter in the newsletter of the community that they're selling, and if people don't protest, we can assume they agree. Aval shal krachim. However, this is only talking about shuls that belong to a certain hamlet, a certain town, a small place. Al shal krachim of big cities, Manhattan, Yerushalayim, Shebayim Sham Komos Hacherim. Everyone comes there. These are public synagogues. I feel the Banos Hom Yishalahem Eino Nimkar. Even if the people of Yerushalayim built it with their own money, the people in Manhattan built it with their own money. Chabad in Manhattan Eino Nimkar. It can't be sold. Elam Ken Talos Avodas Hayachet. It belongs to everybody. So everybody, because everybody who comes from, when people built it, they knew it was in a big city, so they had in mind that they're giving bailus and ownership and the kedusha of the shul to everyone, the entire population, entire Jewish population, entire Klal Yisrael. So you can't sell it unless, when they were makdish as a shul, tells us odas hayachid. They said we're giving it with kedusha that it's dependent on one person's decision, usually like the rabbi or an important person. So therefore, if that individual decides to sell it, as long as he has the scum of the sewer who actually built it, then he's allowed to. Any of things, not just Beis HaKnesses, any of the things, an ark, the Sefer Torah itself, all these things, the same halakhas apply. Let's say an individual built a basic knesses out of his own money, and he gave it to a kila, his kila. It's like they all built it. If he didn't give Matana Gemura, he said, yes, I'm giving it to you, but I still want to maintain ownership or partial ownership. So you can only sell it, even if it's in a village where you could sell it. It has to be with his haskama. Even if the whole congregation decides to sell it, him, or even if he's dead, his yorshim have the right to prohibit that sale. We're only talking about over here if you have another shul out in that community. You can't sell a shul. Even to destroy a shul, you can't do it until you build a new one. Anytime that you're allowed to sell it, right, and you want to change it for something more kedusha, you don't have to publicize, even though the Gemara in Ksubas talks about certain times you have to publicize to get a higher price. You don't have to publicize. Even if you charge a cheap rate for it, there's no ona. 1/6 doesn't, off the selling price, the retail price doesn't invalidate the sale. I'm sorry, the previous halakha was talking about where, in a case where you don't have to worry about Malang Kedusha Morid, and so then you don't have to announce it, and you don't have to worry about no. However, if it's the halachas of Malang Kedusha of Lo Moridin apply, so then obviously you want to get a fair price, so you have to announce it, publicize it, and you have to make sure there's no chet. Kan banu basic Islam, let's say they built a house, person built a house to live in, and they decided, I want a shul in my basement, shul in my living room. Dinak basic knesses. It's like a basic knesses. Aval, the only difference is because when he built it, if you built it as a shul, right? So once you build it, your makdish is at a shul. Here, once it's built at the house, and then I decide I'm going to use it as a shul, that's only hazmana. That's only setting aside. Hazmana is lav milsahi. It's not, we hope asking, it's not, it doesn't do anything until it's actually used for that. Like if you set aside a pair of tefillin, you don't wear them, they're not kadosh. You set aside a bag for tefillin, you don't wear them, they're not kadosh until you wear them. So here, and once people daven there, al-manu l'shem beis haknesses, but if originally it was built as a shul, it became which is valuable, afilu orchim lefisha, even people, guests daven there, they had a minyan there, it was raining and they wanted to go daven there for a minyan, came and shayam yuchal l'tefila kadosh. Then it becomes kadosh. Right, so the difference is, again, when you build it for a shul, also it's hazmana. The difference is that when I build it as a house, and then I designate it as a shul, you have to have people davening there often kavua, right? It has to be someone who's davening a minyan there on a regular basis to validate it as status as a shul. However, if I built it as beginning of a shul, so okay, it's a better hazmana, and all you need is people davening there one time, then it's makudish. V'im lefi sha'ik disho. If he said, I want it to be kadosh for the regalim, I want it to be a shul for, I built a house, I only want to have a minyan here during Yantiv. So it goes based on what his t'nai was. His t'nai was only for Yantiv. So therefore, he's mazmin it for Yantiv. People daven there on Shabbos, does not mock this shit for Shabbos. It only becomes Beis HaKnesses for the Yom Tovim when people daven there on Yom Tov. When people in a village sell a shul, yichol machro mimkar olam. You could sell it forever. Again, there's certain instances where you're allowed to sell a shul. You sell it forever. The person who buys it, right, the money has kedusha that you get for the shul has kedusha. However, the person who buys it can do whatever he wants with it. He can live in there as a house. He can't use it as a spa, he can't use it as a place where they make leather, or base tvila, or can't use it as a mikveh, or base akise, he can't use it as a bathroom. So if you want to build it as a house, you have to make sure the bathroom was in a place, an extension where the shul wasn't. If it was a full mechira with the haskama of the rich people and all the people in the city, then he could even make it for derogatory purposes. He can use whatever he wants because that's a complete sale, not a partial sale. Yud Yesha Omrim Diyachid B'Shalo Afilo Sefer Torah Mutal Machro V'Lasas B'Dam Kol Mashirta. Some say this is the opinion of the Rosh and then Mulki Yosef. Someone who owns a private Sefer Torah, you can sell it and you can do whatever you want with it. Kol Shalo Hekdisho Likros Barabim. This is the Gemara mentions many times. The Sefer Torah you're not allowed to sell unless it's for marrying, getting married, or for Talmud Torah. However, that's only talking about a Sefer Torah that the public uses. If it's a private Sefer Torah that you didn't give over to the public yet, you can sell it whatever you want. But Yesh Misha Oster, and they're the Rambam, and those says it Oster. Elim Kain Lilmo Torah Lisa Isha. Again, below the Sefer Torah apply, even if it's your personal Sefer Torah. Yural, if Beis HaKnesses is Olevenim, Be'etzim Beis HaKnesses is Yashin Shesasru. You had an old shul, and you built a new shul, and you want to destroy the old shul, which you're allowed to do at that point. You can give the old wood or the old bricks as a gift. Because it's not considered degrading to it. When I give someone a present, it's usually to pay back a favor. So it's like a mecher, like selling. Like a mecher, it's like a sale. You can exchange it for other bricks. And those bricks that were the shul, they go al chulin. You can't rent them out. You can't borrow it out, or you can't use it on mashkon, a collateral over there, because you're not getting something in return for it, and it's moridin b'kedusha. Even the shiva tova you're agreed to it. It has to be fair. I'm going to use this halacha to discuss whether the nidon, which I want to discuss in Ian to lean on, whether Mal Kedusha V'lo Moridin applies if you use it for an equal Kedusha. Is that allowed or not? It was a Machlokas, Rishonim and Achronim before. I'm going to tell you what I think in Ian to lean on. Hagav Adavka V'derech Shemoridim Kedusha Asa. Amujal Lahashal Afilu Sefer Torah Likros Ba'afilu Mishal Rabim Liyachid. If you want to lend the Sefer Torah to be read on, so that's not diminishing the Kedusha Sefer Torah. So therefore, you're allowed to, even if it's to a single person or a minion, a small minion, you're allowed to do it. Yud Beis Mi Sheyesh Lo Tanai Makal Shal Yuchal Livnos Beis HaKnesses Kim Hu Luzaro. Right, he's a rich guy. He says, the only person I bought the rights to build a shul for this community. Me and my children, my children, my progeny. Eno Yachal Limkor Zchus La'acher. Once he buys that right, you can't sell it to someone else, because we're going to see throughout the coming halachas. Once someone buys a mitzvah, and building a shul is a mitzvah, having a shul is a mitzvah, so you can't give it to someone else. Once I have a mitzvah, you can't take it from that person unfairly. Yud Gimel Gabul Mos Beis HaKnesses. They collected money to build a shul. Ba'al Lahem Dvar Mitzvah. Before they had the chance to build a shul, they needed the money for a mitzvah. Motzin Ba'al Mos. You use the money for a mitzvah. That's not considered degradation. That's Malam Kedusha. Kano Avonim V'Koros. If they went with the money they collected for the shul and they actually bought the beams or stones or the bricks for the shul, then you can't mishan it for dvar mitzvah. But you could use it to ransom someone who's captured. You even cut the stones, you made them exact measurements, and the beams you already cut to the exact length. It's now ready for construction. Nonetheless, you still sell opinion shuim balvad. Only Binyan Shul. Once they finish the shul, you don't sell the shul. Even for Binyan Shvuyim, what do? You just go to the tzibur and ask them to donate for Binyan Shvuyim. A lot of times people don't have the money to build a shul, so you have a rich guy, Reuven the rich guy, and he says, I'm giving this piece of land for a shul. However, the government came in. They said because of zoning laws, you can't build a shul over here. However, the zoning law said you could build a school, a yeshiva over there. Reuven Omer, he says, I want a shul. I want to give you the land for a shul, not for a school. Reuven cannot go back because he didn't stipulate beferish. And once you give a donation, it's already hektish. It's in the rishus of the hektish, the gizbar, and therefore you can even make it a base medrash, which is malam mikdusha. Now, if Reuven, this is only talking about, the previous halakha is talking about where he's giving land that he was living on, or he had a residence there. Maybe, he wasn't living on, but it was his residence. He's donating his residence to them. If it wasn't his residence, he just had a piece of land. Um, they could even change it to something which is less kedusha, not from shul to a base medrash, even for something which is not kodesh. If he's one of the people of that city, he donated it to the people of his city. Einam rashoyim l'shanosa imomen v'saveach. Then, if he's screaming and he says, um, I don't want you to use it for something less kadosh. Now, he doesn't have the right to protest about making it into a base medrash more kedusha. To say for less kedusha, he has a right if it was his residence. Elim king yesham chaver, unless there's someone, they are a very important person. The Choman the Asya Daiti de Asya, there's a very important person, a VIP who lives in that neighborhood, who down to that shul. They come for him, so therefore we go based on him, and therefore he's the reason that the guy donated. He donated presumably, so this guy should have a shul. This rabbi should have a shul to be the rabbi of. So this gadol should be the rabbi that gadol of, like Harnof, or you have the Grosh shul or Moshe Sternbach. So he's an important person. So then it's up to him. Also, the rich people of the city, they're also like a chaver, someone who's a Talmud Chacham, someone who's a big rabbi, and they have that rights also. Tedvav, ein adam yachol leser chelko beis hakneses lo me'asfarim, aser einam klum. Now, here in shul, I bought a seat over here. I have an ownership partially in the shul. I can't make a nether and say no one can sit in my seat, even though I always go over people who sit in my seat and I tell them to leave because it's my seat and that's the right I bought. It's only a right. It's close. You can't actually own something in the shul because the shul belongs to the entire community, and we hold ein breira. We can't say exactly pinpoint where you own. So you can't make a neder on it. And also the shuls have a lot of svarim. They have bookcases filled, bookcases filled with svarim. Master eno klum. You can't take a neder because it doesn't specifically belong to you. Ted Zion, let's say you lent out your house to be a shul. You have a fight with one of the people in the congregation. You can't say I forbid one person from coming to my house because you gave it as a shul to the seaport, so it's not fair to single out one person. God, the Rambam says nonetheless, it's only if he didn't make any stipulations. He said you can use my house. He says I'm only giving to you on stipulation that I am in charge to make decisions over here. He didn't say I'm giving you, I'm letting you borrow my house. He says come daven at my house. So he retains that right to decide who davens there. Yudzayin, Mishayav Beso, Besak Knesses, Yamim Rabim. He had a shul in his house many days. And as they can't move the minion to someone else's house because he had the schus of having the minion in his, and he donated his house to let the minion go on there. You have no right to take the mitzvah away to him and move the minion to a different place unless he agrees. Yodchet, Yesh Misha Omer, Hektish, Shal Let's say they had silver kalim they put on top. You have the crowns you put on top of the Sefer Torah. Something that the shul couldn't afford them. Individuals, they donated them to the Beis HaKnesses for the use. You can't. They have kedusha, and you can't sell them unless it's for more kadosh thing. If it's questionable who inherited, if he wrote in his Sava, he wants to give these crowns of the Sefer Torah to his children, nothing he can do. But if his minhag was always to give it to the shul, and then he dies and didn't leave any instructions, they're allowed to retain, the shul is allowed to retain ownership. Yod Tet. He found a letter and he says, I want to makdish this certain kalim to the shul. Any kli, he wants to makdish some svarim, or he wants to makdish a crown for the Sefer Torah. There's no witnesses on the document. He didn't actually give it over. They just found it in his house. It's at least Safek Hektish. Safek Hektish, we should as Hektish property of the Beis HaKnesses. And it has the din of Hektish. However, in terms of the Motzi Mammon, we don't go so far to the Motzi Mammon if there's a fight about it. Let's say someone donated a Sefer Torah. But usually when people don't, I don't know how it works. Some people, when they donate Sefer Torah, they donate with a full heart. They give it to the shul. The shul owns it. Sometimes you give a Sefer Torah and they let them borrow it. So they're using the Sefer Torah for many years, and he dies, right? They can't hold on to it and say that it belongs to us. It still belongs to that person as long as he didn't give it believe shalom to them. Chaval of ein liknos meilim shenishamish behem hedyo l'tashmish kedusha. Coats. I know people wear coats that were used for ordinary purposes to wear outside. You shouldn't use them and make them into a mantle for the Sefer Torah, because the bizayon hagav aser lasos. Me'estan zona mechir kelev. This is halachas in the Torah. Estan zona is when you're together with a prostitute. Now it's talking about a prostitute either chayve krisos, according to some books, chayve lavin, or a non-Jew is considered a non-Jewish woman prostitute, and you gave her an animal for payment, or mechir kelev, or you exchanged a product, an item for a dog. Davar shal mitzvah. You can't take that object, that animal, or that object you exchanged for the dog, and use that money and sell that object, use it for dvar mitzvah, go beis haknesses to help build a shul, or Sefer Torah, buy Sefer Torah. But dakam estan atzma, you can't use the actual animal itself. Valim nasula most be'esna. If someone he gave money to the prostitute, mutar liknos behen dvar mitzvah, that's not called an estan. It has to be an animal, and therefore he gives dvar mitzvah. Lemikri zona el isra, but it has to be someone who's chayve kares. Alayla pnuyis hakdeshos or gdishos davar mutar lekabel mehen. If it's a regular prostitute, a Jewish woman is a prostitute, she's not married, so that's an Isser, they're abundant to be together with her. So therefore, the Estan is not Chal in that case, and you're allowed to use it for whatever you want. Chav Beis Adam Shehu Ragil B'Shum Mitzvah could go in Galila. He has a chazak on a certain mitzvah, he always does Galila. Be'eru Ones or Oni. Either, he always purchased Galila, he always had something happen, and now he's poor. But not a Kal Mitzvah La'acher, because he couldn't afford, he has to pay his dues to keep the mitzvah of Galila every year. So he gave it to somebody else who could afford it. Then he got more money. He wants to get it to purchase it back. He had the money. He just decided he didn't want it, but he had the money to pay. And he willingly agreed, let's sell it to someone else this year. Even if he only wants, he said he planned on taking it the next year, he lost his right. His business went down, and he lost all his money. He couldn't afford it. So if he can afford it now, he can goes back to it, because it was unfortunate what happened to him. He lost his money, but now his money's back. It's his mitzvah. You can't take away someone's mitzvah from him if he's doing that mitzvah. That's exclusion of today's share, long share. Hope you enjoy. Stay tuned for Ian Talina when I talk about this machlokas over here. Malang Kedusha of Lomaridin. What about for equal Kedusha? What do we say? In that case, Ian Talina coming up next.